Hello and welcome back to Rocketship, Joe's podcast for financial professionals, advisors, CPAs. You can even be a lawyer. You can even be a real estate agent. Bottom line is, if you do anything within finance, and you may wonder why that also is part of the financial world, in my opinion, this is a podcast for you. So today I want to talk about brand and brand strategy and why that's so important. In my initial podcast was one of the three things I talked about when it comes to really doing digital marketing or just doing marketing in general. Now, here's what I'm thinking. Most of the people out there who could be listening to this, you might be with a larger firm. You're not necessarily an independent RIA or registered advisor, or if you're an insurance agent, maybe you're with, one of the captured agencies, one of the big industries, and you're going to have their branding all over your stuff. And that's perfectly fine. What I'm talking about is you still have to build a personal brand, and your personal brand can still have somebody's logo on it, but you have to build you. And the first thing that we work on with our financial advisors that work with us is we try to figure out what their story is. Now, when we talk about their story, it's not necessarily this image they want to create. Have a separation between images that you're trying to create and this brand you're trying to create and what's actually true to you. The reality is what really works for digital is you just being yourself, trying not to be somebody that you're not. All the things that I'm doing right now literally has everything to do with my life and where I've come from and my personality. I'm not over the top. If I was a monotone speaker and that's all I did was talk in monotone, then my podcast would only be a monotone. However, I'm a little bit more energetic than that. So I like to vary my voice here and there. And maybe you're good at speaking, maybe you're not. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is you just have to be you when it comes to your brand. So the first exercise that we get people doing is figuring out who they are first. Now, this may sound silly and you may think to yourself, well, I already know me. The reality is, have you ever sat down and wrote everything out about your life? And I don't mean a huge biography, but I really do mean like start from the beginning. Give some experiences that you had as a child. Write this stuff down, because if you write this down and you're going to start remembering stories, and this thing's going to build over time because you're going to be doing something else, you're going to go, hey, I remember this. And then you can use that as a story to relate to people later down the road. But let me just give you a good example of my brand story. So the first and foremost, I had a really good childhood growing up. Lived in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm not going to go into full details because I want to save the time on the podcast for you. I always wanted to be a math teacher. So high school, really looked up to the math teachers I had. They were teachers. They were also coaches at our school. I went to an all boys private school in St. Louis, Missouri. DeSmet, for those of you that are listening, just giving you the shout out. Because of that, there was a really cool math teacher there at the time. I don't think he's there anymore. I haven't really looked, but I'd be surprised if he was. Also rugby coach, football coach. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, you're looking up to this person. I enjoy doing algebra. And I was like, yeah, maybe I can come back and coach hockey someday. That was kind of my thought process. I did end up, while I was in high school, I coached like a little kids team. So that was kind of fun. When I went to college, I was kind of a player coach at my college. And when I came back from college, the 1 year I stayed in St. Louis before I moved out to California, I actually went back and coached my high school roller hockey team for a year. And that was a lot of fun. I wasn't a teacher. Actually, I ended up not becoming a teacher at all. I got into business and marketing and management. So completely different than what I was doing, but that's what I wanted to do. So at some point I decided I was going to move to California. The reason why I moved to California was to basically start some type of business or try life out on one of the main coasts. And I was either going to look at New York or I was going to look at Los Angeles, California. And I was trying to decide which coast I wanted to go to. I decided I really like sunshine and warm weather. So New York, sorry. Even though I do love the Big Apple and I do love visiting and I actually really enjoy big cities, decided to move out to California. So when I moved to California, right before I moved to California, I was saving up $3,000. That's all I could save up. I was working at a clothing store in the mall. And that $3,000 was supposed to get me a down payment on an apartment and first month's rent or whatever it was supposed to be, right? But the day before I went out there, I got hit by a deer. Those that live in different parts of the country, deer run into your car. Actually, I didn't have to run into it, hit me. And lo and behold, to get it fixed from the insurance company cost me about $2,500. So I had $500 left in my bank account, and then I had to wait for an insurance claim. So I moved to California. I'm living on somebody's couch, actually some friends that I used to know in high school. And at the same time, I was trying to find a job. couldn't get the money back. I only had $500 to my name. And basically I was living off the 99-cent store for my food for the week. It was a rough patch right off the bat. But what I started doing is I started a little company. I started a little production company, and I started a website that was supposed to bring actors, models, musicians together. And this was at a time when MySpace was only about 30, 40,000, 50,000 members at the time. So MySpace was really new. And I ended up generating about 4,000 people that were jumping onto my website. I was going out at night instead of going to the bar. Sometimes I'd go out to Hollywood. I'd go to like Studio City in Burbank. I'd go to places where I knew actors and musicians and people lived. And I was passing out flyers left and right on to people, putting them on cars, putting them in apartment complexes, everything I could do. And then I was posting ads on Craigslist just to drive people to this website. Lo and behold, later down the road, I ended up getting a cease and desist letter by a huge agency. I won't go into too many details about that because I don't even know if I'm allowed to or not. But the bottom line was it scared the living crap out of me. So I shut the company down. And I probably shouldn't have, but the big guy was going after the little guy living on somebody's couch, and you see that all these fines that could possibly do, you're like, holy cow. Okay, well, maybe I'll just go back to my day job where I worked at Anheuser-Busch. So I was doing this side hustle while I was working as a salesman in the San Fernando Valley, selling beer, going door to door, doing this stuff, which plays into what I'm actually working on, a side project right now where I'll be going door to door to see young business owners or small business owners and entrepreneurs and start, working with them. But bottom line is this kept me in California, worked my way up, ended up at Monster Energy. At that time, I ended up starting to learn about finances. I actually started getting into day trading, started doing some trades myself. And that's when I talked to my father, who happens to be a financial advisor and happened to be one since about 1986. Give him a call up. I said, look, you've always had the flexibility to be there at all of our hockey games and other, soccer, baseball, all the stuff that me and my other brothers used to play. And you took us on some cool vacations, and you always seem to have time for us. So, I'm working this job. I have no life. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I was doing a lot of fun things in Hollywood where I'm entertaining people and taking them out and going to clubs, and pretty good life for somebody who's in their late 20s, mid to late 20s. And I go, but I'd like to see a different future down the road. So started learning about what it was to be a financial advisor. I started studying for my 65 on the side. As I was studying for my 65 on the side, I was still working just to get that done. Finally passed that, started building up a book of business on the side as I'm doing this, picked up some consulting gigs when I did quit, just to keep the lights on and pay the bills as I was still trying to do workshops and seminars and things to build that book of business. And then, lo and behold, fast forward a little bit, here I am in Chicago. I'm again trying to save all the specific details. Here I am in Chicago, started a new company, started a podcast, building up social media, helping financial advisors grow their business, helping other entrepreneurs grow their business, doing things in a way that wasn't necessarily traditional. Now, that's all part of a brand story. It's all part of who Joe Gissy is, right? Saving a lot of details, but I wrote all that stuff down. My point of this was not just to tell you my life story, but it's to say that, there are a lot of specifics and details of things you may not think are relevant, but actually do become relevant, because as you start working with individuals, as you start becoming who you really are on social media, and you start doing marketing and you start building your brand around that story, it's going to resonate with people. You're going to have some people that are like, wow, you know what? It seems like you struggled and somehow you overcome these struggles and achieve some success. Or, hey, I see why you have a passion for this. For me, my passion is because I like helping people. I started where I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a coach. I've always run teams throughout my corporate career. These are things that are good stories and what built me to be me today. And you just need to harness that for what you're doing today. You could have started in the finance industry. You could have started as an insurance agent straight out of college, or maybe you didn't go to college and you started right away. That's fine. Tell that story. What makes you you? You have to be your brand story. And then the passion's going to come out. Again, the passion for me, love helping people. I know a lot of people in the financial industry, you want to help people too, which is why you do what you do. Not everybody's an entertainer. Like I said, not everybody's going to get up and do the big dinner seminar. Not everybody's going to get up and be this dynamic personality. You don't have to be, because that will come through when you end up meeting people. I happen to always have a lot of good energy. I wouldn't say good, but that's for you to decide, but I'll just say energy, because I'm just excited. Like, I'm always excited to talk to people. I'm always excited to find out more about them. Like when I was seeing clients, the first meeting I'd had, that discovery meeting, for those professionals that know it's just more of a conversation to let the client and the prospect do the talking, I would do that, but I would be really engaged with it. I'd be asking them all kinds of questions. And I've even had some of them, they would fall, had a couple, I remember some husbands, they were like, "Hey, you're getting off topic here. I'd like to get back on topic." I go, no. I go, "That's fine, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. See, you think this is an interview for you or for me working with you. This is actually an interview for you to work with me, because I only want to work with people that I really enjoy working with, that I get to know. And this is going to be a long, 15, 20, 30-year relationship. And if it's not, I'd like to know now, because if our personalities don't mix, then it's probably not a good fit." When I started doing that as an advisor, because I knew me and I knew how I react with people, it was almost like a game changer. I got rid of all the, pardon my French, the a-holes out there. I'm not going to do it. Not going to cuss here. Try not to. I'll cuss on YouTube, but not on my podcast. But it's about identifying who you are, using that. And then, that resonates with people. Then you get those referrals like, "Hey, this first, advisor that I went to that actually cared about more about our lives, more than how much money we had saved." Now that the math is important, the money is important, understanding their products are important, and putting together the perfect financial plan or the insurance product or stock portfolio, real estate investment, whatever it is. All that stuff's super important, but what's more important is that you can build that relationship. So kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about. It's building relationships. So your brand story is how you're going to bridge the gap between those that don't know anything about you and those that learn about you. Now, when you're doing a lot of digital marketing, you're going to produce a lot of content. Maybe you're subscribing to one of those auto content generators, and they're putting things out for you, and that's fine. But at some point, you got to be you. What turns somebody on to making that buying decision, that decision that they want to work with you? It's not necessarily that you have the perfect product for them. I just do not think it's important. I think the product is so much less important in the beginning than them understanding who you are as a brand. So let's say you work for State Farm or Farmers Insurance or Edward Jones or Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch or whoever, just name it out there. How do you get this message across? Because a lot of times you might have restrictions because of, the corporate overlords that are looking over you and watching you from a compliant level. Well, if you can't build a personal website, then on your social media, what you ought to do is create business profile pages if you can get that past your compliance. And most of the time you can. In fact, they would probably prefer that you create business profile pages. But you could share things about yourself to build your brand. Maybe you go out and you have somebody create a logo for you that's your signature. Maybe you just use your signature as a logo. Look at my logo. My logo is a created signature for Joseph Gissy. So that way it's a branded image. Now, why wouldn't I be able to put that on my business cards? Now, there are some of you that are using DBAs out there and you're saying, "Hey, this is my DBA. This is the brand. This is great." Okay, great. You still have to build that brand, and that brand still has to have some type of personality. Now, if you go with any of the traditional marketing companies and they do the old traditional methods of let's figure out your brand, and they start trying to figure out your target audience and, like what kind of clothes do they wear? Do they wear a fancy watch? What kind of car do they drive? What kind of color represents your brand? I think that's good to a point, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to come through with your personality to the prospect, right? Like they don't care the colors as much, but you do. The marketing person you hired really cares about the colors. You just have to get you started. You just have to keep telling your story. That's really what it takes to get the people and the prospects to come in and see you. So, or the other thing I want to talk about with branding, I'm a firm believer in that personalized website. I'll say it over and over again. I think you really need to have that for yourself one way or another, and you need to work with your compliance departments or your firm or your agency in order to build that for yourself. I think you need to start producing content, and I would worry less on the quality and more on the quantity to start with, because there's a price of admission with digital marketing, and unfortunately it's time and quantity. Now, if you're looking to expedite that, that's where we can always have a conversation. And I can talk to you one-on-one on how to expedite that, or just keep watching some of the videos and listening to some of the podcasts. That is something that you need just to maximize your brand's potential. So can you really measure, your brand success? Well, yeah, you can. The more prospects you're starting to get in front of, the more views you're getting, the more engagement you're getting, the better off you're going to be at your brand being successful. But the game has completely changed. It used to be that your brand had to get in the right magazines. You had to put ads in the paper. You had to send out a lot of seminar flyers or just mailers out to people in general. So it used to be that you had to do a bunch of mailers and you had to also pay for advertising, or maybe you did some ads on TV. You might spend a lot of time doing local events, and all that stuff is good. That's building awareness for your brand. But there just isn't another cost-effective way than building on digital media or social media, or, just using the computer to do that. Now, I go back to, I believe I said this in a previous podcast, but I'll go back and suggest that you do a lot of this yourself to start with, just so you start to understand it. And then you start, outsourcing some of it out, or, really have the help with a agency or a company that can then put you in the right direction. But goes back to building that initial foundation. So I use this scenario with our advisors that we work with the other day. We're going to be building a house, right? And the foundation needs to be poured. If we don't have that foundation, laid out, and it's not solid, then all the other stuff really won't work. And it takes time too. So building a brand is not something that's going to be an overnight success. Now, it has the potential to be an overnight success. You have the potential of that post to go viral on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn and be picked back up. You have that chance of that video on YouTube to have 100,000 or 1 million views. Like, all that's possible, and it does happen with people, but you need to start building a foundation, and you need to make it look like you know what you're doing, at least to start with. And then you can start building upon that and start putting the framing in and the walls and the roof and all that fun stuff. It builds on itself, but as you start building, as it starts growing on there, your audience is going to grow, your engagement's going to grow, you'll have better call to actions, you're going to get better at doing this yourself. Your team that you're working with is going to get better understanding the way, you move, you talk, you act. All this stuff is going to come into play as you build this house. And you just have to start. You can't just sit on it, because the industry is moving too fast. And right now, I heard the analogy from Gary Vee. It's like social media is like a land grab right now. And we probably have 12 to 24 more months of this land grab for people to really maximize what they can do today, compared to when some of the bigger companies, the bigger corporations, the bigger marketing agencies are going to come in and really start figuring this out. But they still haven't. So there's still time for you to figure this out. There's still time for you to get this up and running. Again, I would suggest you reaching out to me. Let's set up a meeting and let's talk a little bit about it, see what we can do for you. But it's not difficult. It does take work though. So I want to, differentiate those two. It's not difficult, but it does take work. And, but you got to start. And I mean, right now, and this isn't one of those, hey, call to actions, fear of losing out. No, maybe it is all those things, because ultimately, if you're not going to do it, you're just not going to grow as much as you should or would like to. And hey, let's be honest with this. You can keep spending money on doing your workshops and seminars. I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do it right now. I'd be done with that. I would save that money. I would save the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 that some of you are spending on these events. And I just start putting everything in digital. I'm so bullish and all in on digital. That's why everything I'm doing, the companies I'm working with, the advisors that I work with, and I'm big on building the advisors brands with them. I am passionate about every advisor that I work with, and every financial professional, insurance agent, some of the real estate agents that I'm starting to work with, even some CPAs, even some doctors and some lawyers. Like, these are all industries where you can be brand focused, right? And by doing that, it's going to help you grow in today's digital marketing and the modern marketing methods that are being used. And here's the beauty of this. If you are doing this right, and let's say things start to slow down, and let's say traditional media gets cheap, which it should at this point, but it hasn't. It's actually gotten more expensive. But if traditional media gets cheap, then we can start looking at some of the traditional media. Do traditional media today if it makes you feel good and you have the money just to burn. Don't do it if you really want success and you want to save your money and you want it to be maximized. So I hope that this podcast on branding really helps you out. I know I wanted to share my personal story, but I shared it in a very brief fashion, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can talk about when you're developing your personal story. Take this as a next step for yourself. If you're listening to this, sit down for an hour in the morning before work or after work. Make sure it's a quiet place and just write out your brand story. Just write out your personal story. If you're going to sit down with any marketing company, I would hand them that. Say, this is me. This is where I come from. This is what I'm about. Let that be your foundation. Build the brand, build the foundation, and the rest will come. This is Joseph Gissy for the Rocketship podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Talk to you next time. The Rocketship podcast by Joseph Gissy is brought to you through Gissy Ventures, LLC. This podcast is intended to help mentor and grow financial professionals and others in business with a desire to build a digital marketing strategy and other marketing methods. If you are not licensed general consumer of this information, you are more than welcome to listen as well. However, understand the foundation of these topics will be geared towards the financial profession. Joseph Gissy is a licensed financial professional with Tactive Advisors, LLC, and Capital Management Services, Inc., both of which are SEC-registered investment advisors. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. None of the information contained in these podcasts shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit, or an offer to buy any security or any insurance product. The information and opinions contained in all of these materials have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are given for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. The information is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Joseph Gissy does not provide tax or legal advice. If you need those services, please search out a licensed professional in those respective areas.